Okay, give me one more moment and then we will begin. Okay, so I happy that you are all joining us for this. Um, every year Parshas Bo comes around, and this Ramban at the end of the parsha, famously known as the Ramban at the end of Parshas Bo, is one of the Ikrei Emuna sources of Ikrei Emuna that we have, and it's something that the Bali Musar and Gedolei Yisrael have spoken about, for Doros as a one of the pieces of Torah that every Jew has to have this as part of their foundation. As we know, this shouldn't come up until second or third date, maybe third or fourth, depending, until you find a way to say, "Oh, it sounds like the Ramban at the end of Parshas Bo," and depending on the reaction, we see if we take it to the next date or not. It's a very very important source that everybody should be familiar with. Okay, so we're going to go through it. We're going to learn through it. I have it here on the screen next to me, so I'm sorry if I'm not going to be looking at the camera for the whole time. But this is the Ramban at the end of Parshas Bo, where he is coming to explain to us the incredible importance of the experience of Yetzias Mitzrayim, and why the concept of Yetzias Mitzrayim is so central and so uh, um, such a consistent theme through so many mitzvos and so much of avodas Hashem. So the Ramban here focuses on this and explains this to us clearly. Va'ata omer lecha. This is in Perek Yud Gimel in the Ramban. You could look at it inside. The Ramban text is available online for free, many places. Va'ata omer lecha klal b'tam mitzvos rabos. So says the Ramban, I'm now going to give you a klal, a rule, a concept to apply, that you can take this and apply this to many, many different mitzvahs. Hine, me'ez hayos avodas galilim ba'olam, mimei enosh, hechelu hadeos lihishtabesh be'emuna. Okay, so we know that when Hashem created the world, we had Adam Harishon. Adam couldn't deny Hashem, right? He was Yitzir Kapav of Hashem. He was the handiwork of Hashem. Adam couldn't possibly deny Hashem. And Adam's children also didn't and couldn't deny Hashem. Cain was a Navi, also spoke with Hashem. However, a few generations in, once we get to the generation of Enosh, so that's when the concept of Avodah Zarah begins. The concept of people finding sources other than God for what goes on over here in the world. And is going to explain to us right now, the Ramban, what those different ways of denying God were. If anybody's interested in looking into this more, and seeing it fleshed out more fully, so I highly recommend, and this is something you could do on your own time, on Shabbos or whatever. It's not difficult Hebrew, not difficult reading, but in the Rambam, Maimonides, the Rambam, in the Mishnah Torah, right, the Sefer Yad HaChazaka, or Mishnah Torah, the Halacha Sefer. So in the first chelek, the first section, which is Hamada, the chelek Hamada. So in there, it's broken up. There's a number of different areas. There's Yisodei HaTorah, Hilchos Yisodei HaTorah, Hilchos Tshuva, Hilchos Deos. So one of the halachos there is Hilchos Avodah Zarah, and in Avodas Kochavim, I think it's called, and and that's where it goes through all the halachos of Avodah Zarah, what it is, what it isn't, and what all those things. So in the beginning of Hilchos Avodah Zarah, the Rambam gives a whole explanation, a whole historical introduction, explaining how, when, why Avodah Zarah began in the world. And it began, as the Torah tells us, in the generation of Enosh. So that's what the Ramban is focusing on here. He's saying that when that generation hit, so that's when Emunah started to become complicated. Mayhem, Kofrim Be'ikr, Ve'omrim Kia Olam Kadmon. Okay, so that's one type of heresy, one type of denial of Hashem, is there is no Hashem at all. The world has always existed. This is like Aristotle and people today, let's say that even though they understand now that the world is not infinitely old and the universe had a beginning, but that beginning was maybe just part of a cycle that goes infinitely back, or but they basically don't believe in God and they believe that the world just is. Kachashu b'Hashem v'yomru lohu, right? They deny Hashem and say, who's that? That's one type. Umehem machishem b'yidyasu apratis, right? And there are those who believe in God. They believe in this concept of an intelligence and a power, but they don't believe that Hashem knows what's going on over here. V'amru eicha yada kel v'yesh dea be'elyon, right? Does like Hashem really know what's going on down here? Basically saying that maybe there's a God, or there is a God that made everything, but he doesn't follow events of the world. Umayam sheyodu biyadia, and then there are those who say no, Hashem does exist and he does know what's going on, right? He's this incredibly vast intelligence, so he certainly follows current events over here. Umachishim b'hashgacha. However, they disagree. They deny that Hashem intercedes in the world, right? Yediah and hashgacha are two different things. Yediah is that Hashem knows what's happening. Hashgacha is that Hashem knows and responds to what's happening over here. He gets involved based on that yediah. But they don't believe that. Vayasu adam kedigei hayam, and people see humanity just like fish in the ocean. Shelo yashgiach hakel bahem. That there's no reason for Hashem to be mashgiach on them. He doesn't pay attention. Ve'eni mohem onesh or schar. He's not giving rewards or punishments. Yomru azav Hashem esaretz. Right? Hashem doesn't run the world anymore. That's not what's happening over here. Okay, so we have different ways of a person denying Hashem, either denying Hashem outright, chas v'shalom, or denying Hashem's interceding in this world, involvement over here in this world. V'kasher yirtzah Elokim. However, when it comes time that Hashem wants, be'eda o beyachid, either with a group, either with a klal, a community, or with an individual, b'yasa imahem mofes, b'shinui minhago shel olam v'tiv'o, and he's going to make a sign by changing the way the world runs. Right. So let's pause over here for a second just to unpack, as I say, these words. So we're saying over here that Hashem, in the door of Enosh, people started to deny Hashem's existence or involvement in the world. Okay. So now, if Hashem wants to counter that argument, if Hashem wants to show himself over here, and he wants to show that he exists, B, knows, 3, intercedes. So changing nature is a way to do that. We have teva, minhago shel olam, the minhag of the world, the way the thing runs all the time, the consistent thing. I pick something up, I drop it, it falls. I drop it, it falls. So if Hashem makes it be that I pick something up and I drop it and it just stays here suspended in the middle of the air, yeah, yisbar lakol bitol hadeu se'ela kulam. Right, it becomes clear to everybody that all of those ideas are wrong. They're all nullified by this. Right, because that miracle shows all of these things. It shows there is Hashem. It shows there's Hashem who knows what's going on and knows and intercedes and gets involved in what's happening over here. So that undoes all of those aspects of heresy, and furthermore, and let's say, like in the case of Mitzrayim, that not only did Hashem do these things, however, he predicted them, right? He had a Navi say in advance what was going to happen. There's going to be blood. There's going to be choshech, right? So then, Yizbaru Imenu Od Amitas HaNevuah. So you get a twofer, right? You get a bonus, because now, in addition to Hashem being clarified and his emunah standing out, so you also now have the concept of that nevuah, that navi and nevuah being ratified, being proven true. So, I'm sorry, that last sentence is separate, right? And it proves that Hashem speaks to people. And in this combination of a nevuah and a miracle, so the whole Torah is held. The whole Torah is held up, right? Because Moshe Rabbeinu told us these things were going to happen, and they happened in a supernatural way. So that proves that Hashem is involved, and that he told Moshe Rabbeinu in advance how he was going to be involved. So therefore, the whole Torah is true, right? It makes sense that the rest of the Torah that Hashem gave Moshe Rabbeinu, not just the nevuahs about the miracles, the whole thing is true. Now, I just want to put an aside over here. Again, this is a interesting topic, but there's a very big question about this, especially the way the Ramban is saying it. He seems to be presenting it very strong that the reason we believe in Hashem, is because of these miracles, or that seems to be, and you'll see even further in the next paragraph, it seems to be saying that like the point of the miracles is so that we will have emunah. However, there are those that disagree very strongly with that presentation, and they learn, especially from the way the Rambam writes, that like no, our emunah is from our Mesorah. Right, the point of nisim is to make a point in each situation. There's like a certain point to make the nes, but the point of the nisim is not for our emunah. Our emunah we have with our Mesorah, regardless, irrespective of nisim. Nisim are here to strengthen the point, to be machazek us, etc. So that's just a very interesting side topic, and it happens to be the person that I saw who extensively writes about this in a long essay. There's a Rav Moshe Rosenstein from Lomza. He was the mashgiach of the yeshiva in Lomza in Poland, and so he has a sefer about this. I forgot the name of the sefer, but there's a long piece about this, about like, is our emunah based on miracles or not? Okay, but here the Ramban certainly is going with that approach, that to some degree the point of these miracles is in order for us to solidify, to clarify our emunah in Hashem. And now he's going to explain this further. That's why you find many times when the Torah talks to us about the miracles that Hashem did, Laman Teda, Ki Ani Hashem B'Kerev Haaretz. The pasuk says, "Why am I doing this?" So this is talking about in Mitzrayim, so that you will know. I think this is last week's parsha. So you will know that I am Hashem B'Kerev Haaretz. Right? That's what Hashem is saying. I'm making this shinui, this change, this miracle, so you'll know that I'm here. Lahoros ala hashgacha. Now he's going to go and show all these different psukim, how they correspond to the different areas of kfira. I'm not going to break it down and explain each one. I didn't try to sit and work it through, but he's just going to go through now and explain how various psukim are, but the concept being consistent, that the nisim are here to show us this, to teach us this. Lahoros ala hashgacha ki lo azav Hashem lo azav osa lemikrim kedaitam. Right, that Hashem didn't just leave the world to mikra, to happenstance. Va'amar l'ma'an teda ki l'Hashem haaretz. Right, again to show that Hashem's owning the world. The horos ala chidush. Hashem owns the land, so that because he started it, he created it. Ki heim shelo shabaram me'ayin. To explain to us that the world was created from nothing. It's not that the world is infinitely old, and no, Hashem made the world from the get-go. Va'amar ba'avur teda ki ein kamoni b'chol haaretz. Also, another pasuk to know that there's nobody like me in all the lands. Lahoros ala yecholes shuhu shalit b'chol ve'ein ma'akev b'yado. So this is that concept of not just that Hashem exists and that Hashem created the world, but that Hashem is kol yachol. Hashem has all capabilities and nothing stands in the way of Hashem. This is the concept that the Ramchal would call yichud, the idea of yichud Hashem, ein od milvado. There is no other power, there is no other koach or force in the universe. Shu shalit bakol, ein ma'akev biyado. Hashem rules everything, there's nothing that gets in his way. Right? These were all the various ways that the Mitzrim in Mitzrayim were either denying Hashem or doubting Hashem's existence. So the many psukim throughout the whole, these are all in Yetzias Mitzrayim, all of these psukim that are all seem to be revolving around the one idea that Hashem is making these miracles so that we will know that he's here and he's doing it. Okay. So now that's step number one, like laying the groundwork. The idea of the big nisim of Mitzrayim is going to explain now, like summing it up. Imkain ha'osos v'hamovsim hagadolim edim ne'emanim be'emunas habore u'betorah kula. Okay, right? It says it very clearly. Therefore, what we're explaining, the miracles and signs, that the great things that Hashem made, these are edim ne'emanim. They are trusted witnesses be'emunas haborei u'v'torah kula, to attribute, to testify to Hashem and to the whole Torah's truth. Okay. Uba'avur ki HaKadosh Baruch Hu lo yasa osu mofes b'chol dor le'enei kol rasha o kofer. Now, the Ramban is going to explain that, yes, Hashem does this, right? Sometimes he'll go ahead and change nature. He'll make a change in order to show who's in control, who's in charge. I heard a beautiful mashal about this from Rav Avigdor Nebenzahl. Shlita should be well. In the old city of Yerushalayim, there's the Rav of the old city, and he said, if you see an army, sometimes you see these videos, especially in Asia, or Korea, like these enormous armies, thousands and thousands and thousands of people marching, in rows. And then, and they're all marching, mamish, in unison, like identical copies of each other. So it's impossible to tell, if anybody is running the show, who's running the show, what, everybody's going. However, if one person all of a sudden, just any guy, whoever it may be, but in the entire crowd, right, of those thousands and thousands of soldiers, if one person says, now turn right, and then everybody goes, and they all turn right. So now it's very clear who's running the show, right? Until now, it was just minhago shalolam. This whole group was just moving, and it was impossible to tell what it was. However, the second, not what it was, but what was running it, the second that something stands out, the second that one person stands up and says, okay, now we change, and then everybody changes. So now it's very, very clear what was happening all along. It's very clear that this is the person who's making things happen, right? So Hashem does that. However, he doesn't do that always. He doesn't do that for every generation, for every Rasha, and for every Kofer. And that's what the Ramban is explaining now. Just every person who demands Hashem, show himself to me, prove yourself to me, he doesn't do that. However, because he doesn't do that, so therefore, when Hashem does do these things, at the times where Hashem does break nature and does go and make huge changes that show all of us that Hashem is the one that's leading everything all the time, and when Hashem says, now turn right, everything turns right. So when he does do that, we have to make sure that we remember it. We have to make sure that this is something that we are really, really solid with. So Hashem commands us to make a zichron, ve'os, to this concept. And we have to make sure to teach this to our children. And to make sure that our children pass it on to their children. All the way down to us, you and me, into the final generation. Right? Because it's so important, right? The way the Ramban is explaining to us, these Nisim, Yetzias Mitzrayim, this whole event is so important. This is like going back to the foundations of our Emunah. This is showing us Hashem runs the world, showing us that we're the Am HaNivchar, showing us that the Torah is true, right? All of those ideas are testified to by Yetzias Mitzrayim, by the big Nisim, the tremendous Osos that took place in Yetzias Mitzrayim, and therefore we have a huge obligation to never lose focus on that, right? Because we're not going to get that necessarily in our generation. Mr. Hashem will be here for Mashiach, and we'll see it all go down on a much bigger level. But like he says at the beginning, not every Kofer and every Rasha is going to get Hashem to make a miracle for them and to see this. So when he does do it, when he did it, we have to make sure to hang on to that very, very, very tight. And that's why we find that the Torah is so strict when it comes to all different aspects having to do with Yetzias Mitzrayim. Specifically, he starts when it comes to Pesach. Right? So, if you ever thought about this, right? Pesach, right? We have this Yontif. It's wonderful, lots of work that goes into it and everything, right? And all of that work is to make sure that we don't have chametz on Pesach. And why? Because we left Mitzrayim in a very big rush, big rush. There was no time, and we had to eat crackers or lafas if you're Sephardi, right? And therefore we want to commemorate that. Okay, but you ever think about why is it so severe? So severe. Mamish chametz is it Isser kares just for having a Cheerio on Pesach? You know what I mean? I get it that they left it a rush. I get it that it was a big miracle and that we're appreciative, right? But that a person should be chayiv kares for having a Cheerio over Pesach. So he's explaining why. Because Pesach and the Isser of Chametz is all here to commemorate the incredible nisim that happened. And yeah, it was an incredible nice that we got out just like that from 1 second to the next, and that there was no time even to let the bread rise mamish from 1 minute to the next. It would have made the difference of them staying there or not. So we have to make a really big deal to not forget that. We have to make a really big deal to make sure that we remember this, that our kids remember it, and our grandkids remember it. And yeah, so eating chametz on Pesach is kares, and it's and true until today. You know what I mean? It's one of those halachos that even really disconnected Jews who probably still do eat chametz on Pesach, but they're very disconnected Jews do some sort of Pesach, do some sort of Seder, have some sort of a commemoration, and that's because it's as opposed to Sukkot. I think there's many more Jews that do a Seder than eat the Sukkah. Right, and that's because the Seder is a much bigger deal, and there's a bigger deal made out of it, and especially for children, it's a very powerful memories and all of these things. And the Ramban is explaining the reason is because of this, because this is all connected to Yetzias Mitzrayim, which is connected to laying the foundations of our Emunah. And the same thing, Azivas HaPesach. There's very few mitzvahs asay that a person can get kares for. Right? Kares is almost always in a punishment for an avera, like eating chametz on Pesach, eating on Yom Kippur, being mechal Shabbos, right? However, not performing a mitzvah, right, is usually there's not actually a punishment that's in it. It's just that there's a bittul asay, a person just didn't do it. But a few mitzvahs that are so important that the Torah attaches an Isser Kares, right? One other example is bris milah. A person has a chiyuv to give a bris to their kid, and if not, then a person has a chiyuv as a adult to get a bris milah, and if not, they're chayiv kares. And the other one, like the Ramban is saying here, vazivas haPesach, that a person who doesn't bring the carbon Pesach is chayiv kares, right? And now he's going on to the mitzvah of tefillin, that every Jewish man, every single day, and in the olden days they used to wear it all day, every day has to put tefillin on their arm and on their head. What's in tefillin? Yetzias Mitzrayim, right? That's again just binding our arm, tying our arm, putting beineinenu to make sure we don't forget this. V'lichtov oso od al pischei habatim b'mezuzos. Now this is a hard one to understand, and many Rishonim speak about this, Achronim, that mezuzah doesn't really have anything to do with Yetzias Mitzrayim, so that's a little bit hard to understand. So I'm not going to go there because he gets to it again. But if you want to look up stuff over Shabbos, so you can look around on this Ramban that people discuss. Why is he mixing mezuzah into something zecher Yetzias Mitzrayim? But that's what he says. V'lichtov oso od al pischei habatim b'mezuzos. And we have a mitzvah today. One of the girls in school said she thought it was obvious. Well, it was obvious because just like in Mitzrayim, they put the blood on the doorpost, and just like that's to protect us, mezuzah is to protect us. So it's obviously connected. So I thought that was interesting. The mezuzah is not to protect us. That's like something that people have confused somewhat. There's a mitzvah deraisa of a mezuzah. And there's an inyan that it provides protection, and that's why you're supposed to put it as close to the outside as possible, so that it protects as much as possible. But that's not the reason for the mitzvah, and I would never have made that connection. That whatever. Anyway, it's very interesting, and if anybody has good ideas, you could text me or something. But v'lichtov also od al piskei habatim mimzuzos v'shenazkir zeh bepinu beboker u'be'erev every single day bepeh we have to say, right, Hashem Osharotzeis Yaschem Eretz Mitzrayim Lios Lachem Le'Elokim, right? That's the in Shema, morning and night we say the third paragraph of Kriya Shema. That's the paragraph to remember Mitzrayim of Moshe Amru Emes V'Yatzav Daraisa, right? Okay, that's the Gemara saying this. Because of the man Tizkor Yom Teischem Eretz Mitzrayim Kol Yemei Chayecha, right? So that again we have every single day, morning and night we have to remember it. Vishenasa Sukkah B'Chol Shana, and furthermore we have Sukkos, right? The whole Chag of Sukkos is also Zeicher L'Tzias Mitzrayim, right? So we find there's tons of mitzvos that we have that are all revolving around the idea of Yetzias Mitzrayim, and stressing the tremendous importance of the concept. Furthermore, he doesn't mention it over here, but this is just a fascinating point. Even in places where it doesn't really seem to make sense, we bring in Yetzias Mitzrayim. What do I mean? In Kiddush on Shabbos, right? And Kiddush on Shabbos, we say Zeicher L'Tzias Mitzrayim, Kivanu v'charta v'osanu kidashtu, right? So, but what do you mean? Mitzrayim was thousands of years after the world was created. Like, how could we be celebrating Shabbos Zeicher L'Tzias Mitzrayim, right? I'm not going to answer. You think about that one. That's a good one. Think about it. Okay. Rav Weiss has a beautiful answer for that. Okay. V'chein kol kayotze bahen mitzvos rabo zeicher l'tzias Mitzrayim, and that's where you find many, many mitzvos, even Kiddush on Shabbos, zeicher l'tzias Mitzrayim. V'hakol lios lanu, and all of this is for the same reason. It's all consistent. Lios lanu b'chol hadoros eidos b'movsim shelo yishtakchu, that there should be these Adim, these witnesses testifying to the miracles, so that they should not be forgotten. And there's no room, there's no place for a person to come and deny Hashem. What, a person's going to say, you know what, I don't think I believe in Hashem. Well, one second. Where were you, Yudal and Nisan, Tesvav Nisan, just last year? Where were you at a Pesach Seder? Right, okay, what were you doing at a Seder? We're going through. Okay, why were you going through those things? Because of it. Well, who told you to do that? My father. Who told him? His grandfather. Where did it come from? Right. If we keep these mitzvos, so then there's no room, there's no place for kfira to seep in, because we are so thoroughly infused with this idea. Right, we're so bought into this idea, and it surrounds us on so many levels that there's no place to not believe in Hashem. Ki akona mezuzah bezuz echad v'kava bepischo v'nischavin be'inyana. And again, this is hard to understand because it doesn't say anywhere that the inyan of a mezuzah is to remember Mitzrayim. It does say the inyan of mezuzah is to remember Hashem, right? Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, and v'ahavta. That's for sure. A person is supposed to remember Yichud Hashem when they see the mezuzah and leave their house. They're leaving. They should be thinking everything is min hashamayim, right? But I don't know that there's any connection between Zecher Yetzias Mitzrayim and the idea of mezuzah. Yet the Ramban writes here, a person buys a mezuzah with just $1, a zuz echad, just a little bit of money, the kava, the pischa, and he puts it on his door, v'nischavin be'inyana, and he thinks about it properly. Kvar hoda b'chidush ha'olam u'v'yadiyas ha'bori b'ashkachaso v'gam b'nevua v'himin b'chol pinos ha'torah. Right, so with that one act, right, just like any of them, like any of these ideas that are here, Zecher L'Tzias Mitzrayim. So boom, it's all there with that one concept, that one idea. I put up the mezuzah in my house, or I walk by my mezuzah and I think about the concept of Yichud Hashem, and this, boom, that's it. I'm bringing into my heart now the idea of Hashem and the Chidush HaOlam, and that Hashem knows what's going on, that Hashem is mashgiach and what's going on, and that there's nevuah u'maimin b'chol pinos haTorah. It makes me now a maimin in all aspects of the Torah. Milvad shahoda shechesed abori gadol ma'od alosei ritzono shotzianu me'oso avdos lecherus b'kavod gadol l'schus avoseim achveitzim b'yiras shemo. Right. In addition to the tremendous chesed, right. In other words, it's not all that there was in Yetzias Mitzrayim. It wasn't only emuna and being mechazik emuna. It was a massive chesed for Klal Yisrael. It was a massive salvation for us. And that's a part of it also, right? However, the main point that he's focusing on here is this emuna. Okay. Amru, and therefore Chazal tell us in Pirkei Avos, the very beginning of Perek Beis, second Perek, have a zayar b'mitzvah kala kibechamura. You have to be careful with every mitzvah. You can't say, oh, you know what, I take the big mitzvahs carefully. I'm very good with the big ones. The little ones, I'm not so into those. No, you can't do that. Have a zayar b'mitzvah kala kibechamura shekulam chamudos v'chavivos ma'od, right? Because all the mitzvahs are precious to Hashem. And why is that? Why can't I differentiate between mitzvos? Why can't I say, oh, some mitzvos I'm into and those I take seriously, and other ones no, I'm not so into those. No, because every mitzvah is the same in a certain way. Every mitzvah shekulan chamudas v'chavivos ma'od in the following way: shebechol sha adam moda behen le'elokav. Because anytime a person is involved in the performance of any mitzvah, I'm connecting to Hashem. That's my I'm moda to Hashem at the time I'm doing this mitzvah. This is really very much following what we were just learning in Sefer Derech Hashem, that the whole point of all of the mitzvos is this concept. But here he's saying it mamash, flat out. The kavanas kol hamitzvos. What's the point of all the mitzvos? Shenamin be'elokenu v'noda elav shuhu borenu. Right. The point of all the mitzvos is to bring us to emuna in Hashem, to bring us to oneness and closeness and connection to Hashem. The mitzvos are not an end to themselves. In one sense, they are. We know, right? A person should do the mitzvah even without the schar and even without anything else. Just the doing the mitzvah itself is bringing me a certain shleimos, and it's a good thing, right? But what's the point? What's the point behind the mitzvahs? Shenaimin belokenu v'nodei lav shuhu borenu v'hi kavanas hayetzira. That's the point of everything. That's the point. That's why Hashem made the world. She'en lanu tam acher b'yetzira yeshona. There's no other reason for the universe. There's no other reason for the universe, for the world to have been created. Ve'ein kel elyon chafetz b'tachtonim, and Hashem has no other desire, no other interest in what happens over here in the world. Milvad she'eda adam v'yoda le'lokav shebaro. Other than Hashem, other than a person recognizing Hashem and thanking Hashem and connecting to Hashem. But that's the whole point of the universe. It's the whole point of a point, right? It's why Hashem made anything to begin with, was to give people an opportunity to connect to Hashem. And what's the best way to connect to Hashem is through doing the Torah and the mitzvos. So anytime a person is involved in the mitzvos, so we are involved in tapping into this whole system, not tapping into, plugging into, however you want to say, this whole system, this whole structure that is the whole point of the universe. By doing this mitzvah, I am connecting to Hashem and making sure I'm thinking about Hashem, right? So that's just like a very important point. A lot of times people can be very involved in mitzvos and really not involved with Hashem at all, right? People can sort of see mitzvos as like a chart, a star chart, right? Like a checklist of just things that I need to make sure that I do, without at all being misbonen, contemplating, thinking about Hashem and what these mitzvahs have to do with Hashem and me and Hashem and connecting to Hashem, and right, all of those. Now again, obviously a mitzvah without all of this kavanah is still powerful. It's still something, right? So a person, we have to try everything. However, to connect to Hashem, that's the kavanah of the Yetzirah. Okay, now he says a side point. I'm just going to read this quickly, just because this is an interesting source. But he says here, Mamish goes off to the side, very interesting, about screaming and davening, about davening very loud, specifically, davening with a very loud voice. The kavanos romamus hakol betfilos. And the concept behind raising our voice in davening, the kavanos bati ekniskils v'schus tfilos arabim, and the concept of a shul, and the concept of the merit of the masses davening together. Zeu shiyeh lebnei adam makom yiskabtzu v'yodu lekel shabarim v'hamtziam v'yifarsamu ze v'yomru lefanav v'yosecha anachnu. Right, that's in order to give a place for people to get together and to do this, to declare that and publicize. We are Hashem's, we're yours. right? And we're here to do your work. This is what Chazal said. You cry out to Hashem with strength. Right? This is an interesting idea, but okay. But he says this is where people daven very loud from, and that at the end there he says this interesting lashon chatzifa natzach lebisha, that you could approach Hashem with the busha, with like shame and embarrassment, and oh, I'm sorry Hashem, but I want to ask you for something, please help me out, versus chutzpah, like crying it out and bellowing it out, Hashem, save us, So he's saying chatzifa netzach labisha, that there's an aspect where the chutzpah beats out the busha. Like when it comes to davening, and again, I don't know exactly how to take this, and where, but like sort of like demanding from Hashem. This is like the Berdichever, Lev Yitzchak Berdichev. Like there's lots of stories about this type of tefillah, this type of anhaga of like not clashing chas v'shalom with Hashem, but like a certain chutzpah. If anybody knows what I'm talking about, stories about Rav Levi Yitzchak Merbeditchev, there's a certain chutzpah in his davening, and that this is like the source for that. This is the concept. Okay, but so again, let's just get back to it. After this is like a side point. This thing about davening, but the kavanah of all the mitzvos, right, is for us to believe in Hashem, to connect to Hashem, and that's the kavanah of the whole Yetzirah, the whole universe to begin with. Okay, so now let's bring it back to the miracles and what we get out of the miracles. Because remember, he said before at the beginning that when a person, when Hashem makes a mofes, right? So what was the lashon he said? When Hashem wants with either a group or with an individual, v'yase imahem mofes, and he makes for them a sign, a miracle, b'shinui minhago shel ha'olam v'tivo, by changing minhago shel olam, the way of the world, and its teva. So now let's understand. So now that we're learning and understanding all of this, and we see that Hashem runs the world, and Hashem knows, and Hashem is mashgiach, and Hashem is kol yachol, and He tells prophets in advance, right? So what now happens to the concept of minhago shel olam? What happens to the concept of teva? Right? If Hashem is really doing everything all the time, so what's the difference between a miracle and nature? Right? Why should there be any fundamental difference? And then it's going to explain that there's not. That's exactly correct. And from the big nisim, from the big tremendous signs, the big osos that Hashem makes, Adam moda benisim hanistarim. So a person now comes to be moda also on the nisim hanistarim, right? When a person, again, just like the mashal, that army, that group of troops, of soldiers, thousands of them all marching together in one direction, and we have no idea who's in control, is anyone in control, right? But then as soon as we see that one person who gives them instructions, who tells them to stop, tells them to start, tells them to turn right, to turn left, right? So then we see we're moda benisim anistarim. So now we recognize and we realize that even when they're just walking straight and they're just doing their thing, that's also only because this guy told them to. It's also only because he had them set up and be in this way, and he told them to march to begin with. If he wouldn't have done that, they wouldn't be doing that either. From the things that change nature, this is the foundation for the whole Torah. Being that Hashem is involved with us every minute. Hashem is Yodea, Mashgiach, Yachal. Hashem is constantly involved with us. She'ein Yesod HaTorah Kula. And look what he says here. This is like so harsh. She'ein la'adam. She'ein la'adam. Chelek b'Toras Moshe Rabbeinu Achinamin b'Chol Divrenu Mikreinu Shekulam Nisim Ein B'Hem Teva U'Minhago Shel Olam. Right, unbelievable thing. Right, that a person has to realize. First, he says She'ein la'adam Chelek b'Toras Moshe Rabbeinu. A person has no part in the Torah of Hashem, the Torah of Moshe. It's such a powerful language. Again, I'm sure that there's a lot why he chose exactly these words. right? Very powerful. Ein la'adam chelek b'Torahs Moshe Rabbeinu. A person does not have a portion in the Torah of Moshe ad shena'amin, until he believes she b'chol devreinu umikreinu, everything that happens to us, all the occurrences, all the events of our lives, shekulam nisim, they are all miracles. It is all miraculous. Ein bahem teva uminhago shel olam. There is no such thing as nature, no such thing as minhago shel olam, no such thing as, oh, this is the way things work. The fact that I pick this up and it drops, every time, that's because Hashem decided that the minhag of the world is going to be that I pick this up and it drops every time, right? But there's fundamentally no difference from Hashem's point of view. The next time if I drop it and it just stays in the air, right? That's for Hashem, it's exactly the same. He's making everything happen every single instant. Rav Nebenzahl says also a beautiful mashal about this, right? You look at a seed, right? Take a seed of a fruit, an apple seed, right? So a seed could sit on a shelf inert for years, right? And in the right conditions, decades. It could just sit there dead, right? There's no life in a seed at all. There's no biological processes. It's just in a state of being, right? And then what do? I take that seed, I put it in some dirt, I put some water on it, and all of a sudden, boom, it springs to life, it opens up, it grows, right? Now, is that a miracle? No, we're used to that. That's totally normal. That's what happens, right? We put stuff in the ground, right? However, it's Tu B'Shvat this week. I highly recommend. We're going to be showing in school one of those plant videos that I'm going to watch with the girls and explain stuff, explain stuff along the way. And I lost my train of thought over there. Yikes. Oh, right. So I'm saying, so when you see it in fast motion, it's miraculous. It looks wild. It's unbelievable, right? That seed goes in and it opens up and it moves and it grows and all of these things, right? But we don't really bat an eyelash like that because that's we're used to it. But it says Rav Nebenzahl, right? When we put a dead body in the ground, right? Lo aleinu. So right, the teva is it goes down there and it stays there, right? But one day they're also going to grow. One day they're also going to come back by tchias amesim, and right, we're all going to be amazed and shocked. But that's only because we're not used to it. We've been doing it all our lives with seeds and expecting it to grow, even though that's just as miraculous, right? And Nace versus teva is just what we're used to versus what we're not used to. Bein barabim, bein b'yachid, right? And this applies whether to the masses or whether to individuals. Okay, fine. And then the Ramban, continues with this idea. So I just, like every year, I feel this is so important. I want to just also say that the learning should be a schos li'ilui nishmas, the grandfather of one of the alumni who's here on the shir. So it should be ilui neshama for Mashiach HaKohen ben Pinchas, as well as a nechama for the family. B'soch shar eveli Yerushalayim. But the idea behind this Ramban and how important this Ramban is, to me, this week is Parshas B'Shalach. Next week. So this week on Tuesday, everybody reads Parshas Haman. Right? There's a famous segula. I don't know where it comes from or where it started, but there's a very well-known segula that on the Tuesday of Parshas B'Shalach, right, which is in Parshas B'Shalach next week, we have Kriyas Yamsuf, and we have the mitzvahs of Shabbos for the first time, and the Man is introduced for the first time. So it's a well-known thing. I don't know the source, but that on Tuesday of Parshas B'Shalach, you're supposed to read in the Torah. After Az Yashir, when they get into the Midbar, that's when the Man arrives. So to read Parshas Haman is a segula for Parnasa on the Tuesday of Parshas B'Shalach. So I want to start a new segula on the Friday of Parshas Bo, that we should learn the Ramban on Sof Parshas Bo, and it's a segula for Emunah. It's a segula for Kedusha, a segula to have a connection to Hashem, and to have a chelek in Torah's Moshe Rabbeinu. So, okay, I hope you all take this Ramban with you and live like this, Mirz Hashem, and we should be zochet to see the Nisim Magdolim Amforsamim that are going to take us out of this Galus B'Karov, Mirz Hashem. All right, ladies, have a great Shabbos.
Thank you. Good Shabbos.
Shabbos.